How much reinforcement do you get from your people to say, dude, what you're doing is contagious and it's made a difference for me?
I do get that feedback, and it energizes me more to do more of it. It changes that challenge every day from just a head down slog it out to, oh, no, this is worth it because we're making something better.
Welcome to the Word on the Street podcast, where it's all things AE.
I'm Mark Goodale, Managing Principal of Morrissey Goodale.
And I'm Mick Morrissey, also Managing Principal of Morrissey Goodale. I'm co-founder of the firm with my partner, Mark.
And you are watching Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast. And Mick, welcome to 2025 and Happy New Year to you and yours.
Season's greetings to you too, Mark.
Appreciate it. And you know, Mick, I was once Happy New Year'd in April. Even March is pushing it to me. What's your cutoff there?
Cutoff for me, I have to say, is January 2nd, Mark.
Oh, wow. Wow, that is rather Scrooge-like.
Ruthless, yes.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. So joining us today is Mike Carragher, the president and CEO of VHB, number 62 on the ENR Top 500 list. Mike, Happy New Year to you, and welcome to the street.
Happy New Year, guys. It's great to be with you.
Well, it's great to be with you, too, and we really appreciate you being here. Any New Year's resolutions, Mike, that you'd like to share, or have you broken them already?
You know, I've broken most of them. Got one about my golf game, and I haven't swung a club, but the first time I swing it, I'll throw it.
Now, Mick, I think it's 8-pack abs for you, but I think you already have those.
That's it, but I'm surprised, Mike. I didn't know you were a golf player. Is that the case?
Exactly.
Really?
I enjoy playing. I've never gotten any better, but it's how I have a blast with my son, play with my daughter, some friends at work, but don't seem to get any better.
Mike, thanks so much for being a loyal reader of Word on the Street. And you've got an article you'd like to talk about with us called 7 Reasons Why Strategic Plans Work and 7 Reasons Why They Fail, which I believe we wrote first quarter of last year sometime. And what grabbed you, Mike, about this particular article? And hopefully I'm not reasons 1 through 7 for why they fail.
You've got 1 and 2, but the thing that really hits you, I really believe in strategic planning and the importance of it. I really think the idea of helping your company envision where you could go and then taking the time to work with all of your people and really, work closely with your team to think about if that's a future we envision ourselves, let's get to work on really thinking about a strategy over the next 3 to 5 years that would get us there, which is very different than tactical or business planning. And it's something I've learned since I walked in at VHB with Rich Hang in the late 90s, and VHB has used to have a kind of continuous sustainable growth program. And it's what I attribute a lot of our success over the years to. So it's something that's very important to me.
Well, it's a different muscle group that you use, Mike, and it can really wear people out who are not used to doing it. Was it like that for you at first, or did you just kind of take to it?
I spent the early part of my career at a few different firms, and every year it was get to the end of the year, see how you did, and then start thinking, well, what do we do different tomorrow? And when I first came to VHB and I started talking to Rich Hangen, and he was telling me about where they hoped to take the company, what they really wanted to be. And then here's some thoughts of how we believe we're going to get there. And it was like this thing went off, and I was like, this is what I was looking for. I knew there had to be something bigger than just every year starting over. And I just became a student of it. And I kind of took to it, and it's fascinated me, read it and engaged in it, talked to others about it, and something I really enjoy. And me and my colleagues at VHB now, we've been doing this over time, and we see the results of it. So it's become something we actually have a lot of fun doing.
What have you learned, Mike? You've been doing this for a while now. You've had a lot of practice at it. You've really put a lot into it. and you've brought people into it as well. What kind of lessons have you learned? What works, what doesn't?
Communication is the biggest part from the very beginning, and reminding people where you've come from and why you want to go about the next strategic plan, helping them start to think through and giving them questions to think about, well, where would we like to go over the next 5 to 10 years? We literally engage the entire company in it. And, it's something I talk about as I go to the offices and get ideas, perspectives, and then bringing that back to, a strategic planning committee and a leadership team gives us a lot of good input to start thinking about it. And then keeping it alive and updating, the entire company to what we're doing with the information they shared with us. And then really communicating, when you get to that point and you say, all right, we've reinvigorated our vision and this is where we see the firm going based on all that we heard from everyone, the input from outside advisors, the input from the research we've done. And if that's where we want to be in 10 to 15 years, we think these 5 or 6 major thrusts will be important to advance us. And then, the rollout of it, the explanation of it, the keeping it alive in all of my interactions with the company, whether they be through updates from Mike or when I'm visiting, talking to people, and even how you lay out, the activity of your year and how you at the end of the year think about how do you celebrate the advancements you've made and remind them that they were part of the strategic thrusts you were making and how that worked and what things we've moved faster or slower. So what does it mean about our focus for the next 2 to 3 years? And just keeping it alive in the conversation so everybody kind of realizes that it's not just something on the shelf, but it's shaping the decisions we make, the investments we make, the opportunities that they have. And so people can actually talk about it as a living thing. And when it's a living thing, it has a bigger impact on shaping people's discretionary decisions, which is all about trying to get everybody headed in the same direction.
Right.
Mike, you're clearly passionate about the topic. And you talked about how you love strategic planning. You're a student of strategic planning. You believe in strategic planning. And I think for listeners and viewers of the pod, if you're in the Northeast or really anywhere up and down the East Coast, VHB. When I think of VHB and I think of how the firm has grown, when was the firm founded, Mike?
79.
So, by all rights, VHB shouldn't have made it out of the recession of 87, 88 in the Northeast. And yet the firm thrived and has gone on from strength to strength and has weathered more subsequent recessions. Some of that I have to believe is down to strategic planning. And so while the firm is well known on the East Coast, which it really is, I believe, I think that your passion for strategic planning has given the firm a prominent place in the entire industry because you've brought that passion to the ACEC Research Institute, right? I mean, you and your team there have created something new with the ACEC Research Institute, and you're really charting the future of the industry using strategic planning. And you're in the vanguard with that, is that right?
It is. It's how we're thinking at the Research Institute, and it's what excited me when John Carragher, who was the first chair, approached me to be the vice chair, was this idea of how do we help the industry think far enough into the future that we're investing now to be able to realize, a sustainable, successful future. And so even just the idea of, so who do we aspire to be? What do we want to be as an industry in 2035? Which at first was kind of making a few people say, wait, we got to get to work on research. And we had this conversation that says, but before we start researching things, let's think about what's going to be important to us as an industry 10, 15 years down the road. Let's explore some different scenarios of how that 10 to 15 years might play out look for commonalities and then say, well, there's a few threads that we should probably concentrate investment on if we want to be a thriving, impactful industry, really having a big impact on the built environment and our communities and the sustainability of where we live, work, play, and move around every day. So there were some parallels there, and it's why the Research Institute has just been the most exciting thing I've been involved in outside of my day-to-day job in any engagement with any association over the years. We're working together with a broad array of industry leaders to think about the future and then say, okay, well, what is it about technology and AI that we need to start understanding? How might that change the business model? What will the workforce look like, and where should we be doing homework to prepare that? How do we really ensure that all the people in our industry are bringing a much broader perspective to even shape the challenges before we start to solve problems and not just run to, hey, we can engineer anything, because that hasn't always been the best way to play it out. Let's ask better questions. So all of those things are what we're trying to really understand in real estate, so we can help provide all of the firms in our industry and all the leaders with better tools to help their companies think of how does their company fit into making that successful future.
Mike, tall task. What's in the way? What are the big barriers to realizing that vision?
There's two or three. The first one is doing what we do and running the businesses that we do is challenging every day, and trying to, get people from different firms, different perspectives to pick their head up and be part of that conversation when they're dealing with challenges day to day. That's just a practicality element of it. The other big challenge that we've started to get at is there are so many different ways the next 10 or 15 years could play out. But working with professor from Penn and professor from Yale, who've really helped us through this idea of scenario planning, and then gathering together 80 leaders of firms and associations to go through scenario planning of 24 different scenarios. We actually got that group together, worked on it for a number of months through 2024. And now we're starting to put together the common themes to think about the research. So now it's about figuring out how do we engage the right types of people and find the funding to do serious research with practical applications for our peer firms. So, taking on that idea of thinking, broaden the aperture of the pipeline for people to kind of help support with the fundraising for those efforts.
Only so many hours in the day. You've got work at home in the firm, and yet you can see how this could benefit the entire industry, your firm at the same time.
It does.
What did you need to let go of?
I think where VHB is and the really strong leadership team that we have at VHB has allowed me to step out of the day-to-day more. And, I sit in the chair in the CEO role, so it has me leaning more into making sure in that kind of CEO chair perspective, I'm starting to think about what will 2030 be like? What will 2035 be like? And how can we as a company with some foresight start thinking about that? And the leadership team I have is really great now at taking on more of the operational aspects as well as advancing the strategy. So it allows me to stay in front of them and keep asking our colleagues those challenging questions so we can all move together, but taking care of almost all three horizons to be looking at the same time.
So bringing it back to VHB, Mike, and I look at the article that we had back last year in the first quarter, we look at the plans that fail. And having worked with you on the plan closely over the past year, overly ambitious or unrealistic vision off the top, ignoring internal weaknesses, botching communication, avoiding change, underestimating execution, misinterpreting risk. The list goes on and on. There's plenty of trap doors to fall into, but I'd like to focus on the first two or three. being overly ambitious or unrealistic. That can be a problem, but the opposite is, to me, even a bigger problem sometimes. Our reach has to exceed our grasp, or what's heaven for, as the saying goes. How do we get it just right?
I think by starting out reminding people of where you've been, what you as a team have been able to accomplish, what challenges realistically still have, and saying, look, we have a track record of getting better year over year, 5-year span over 5-year span. Yes, we have some challenges, and we can work on them, but we need to make sure we're staying successful and competitive, not for what's happening tomorrow, but what's going to be happening 2-3 years down the road, if we hope to have that ability to be successful, I'll say, on this infinite arc. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think of restarting every year. I just think of how do you travel along this arc of success that you're trying to accomplish. And once you get them to realize, no, you're right. We have conquered some challenges. I mean, Mick, you pointed out, we have navigated through down economies. We have navigated through different parts of our markets really slowing down. And you can navigate through them and get to the other side. So we can do hard things, and reminding people of that. So saying, yeah, we have some things to fix, but let's have confidence we can address them. But beyond that, we still need to be planting some seeds for future growth opportunities. And reminding everybody, you can navigate them, and that you can think short-term and long-term in the right balance.
So you're talking about planning and resilience, I think, in that regard. And how much of that resilience and commitment to doing hard things did you learn when, in the middle of the most recent recession, you headed off to Florida, right, from Watertown? You took an acquisition which may or may not have been doing what it needed to do, moved the family down there, right? And you turned that whole thing around and made that a thriving part, or fully integrated part of VHB at a very difficult time. Like, what lessons did you learn there, Mike?
One, that you can do nothing by yourself. There's a lot of people around VHB and outside the industry, kind of like yourself, kind of helped me think this through. And even in the most challenging of situations where it all starts with envisioning an exciting, better future.
Yeah.
And then figuring out, okay, what are the short-term roadblocks, spending some time building relationships with your team, with your colleagues, fixing some of the fundamental elements, and gaining the trust of your team, that when they say, hey, we can take these steps, we could actually change what we're doing and advance to a different level of success, that they look at you and not say, you're crazy. There's no way. Because you've built those building blocks of, we fixed a few things, we've built some relationships. Be honest that this isn't going to be easy, but creating a vivid description of success where you say, it will feel like this when we get there. And then say, wouldn't it be worth putting in the effort if we could get to this position and this level of success, be working on these types of projects, which is why all of us in this industry, we want to do cool projects. We want to do projects that improve our community or change the nature of how we move around or enjoy a community. So let's put the hard work in. Let's move up so that we have the choice of the types of projects to do. That gets people excited.
Yeah.
If you start talking about, well, we want to grow by X%, or we want to get to this profitability, that doesn't excite or motivate anybody. It's the strategic advancement. It's the opportunity to work on better projects, more interesting projects, to be able to actually have a pick of the best clients and the best projects. That excites people. And if you do those things right, and you're taking care of, the operational things along the way, the outcomes of that are, yes, you're working on better projects. You're an attractive place for people to come to your firm or to work on your team. You're probably going to have better performance, and you can reward your people better. And it becomes kind of that virtuous cycle that really gets rolling.
Well, Mike, one of the things that I really admire about you is that first of all, you have that mindset. It's in your head and it's in your heart, and that's clear. But it wouldn't be clear if you weren't able to articulate it. And what you just talked about tells me that there's a lot of sort of marketing and sales involved in getting a vision out there. And I think from what I've observed at VHB, you've done a tremendous job of communicating, which can be a significant barrier. Like I said, it can be in your head and it can be your heart, but if it doesn't get out there, if people aren't hearing the story, and it really is storytelling, isn't it, to some degree?
Storytelling is a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you share with us, if you would, at least some insight as to how in a 2,000 plus person firm you can get these messages of excitement and hope and future out to all the folks?
A lot of it, I think, starts from just, I know I enjoy, thinking about and wanting a better future in whatever aspect we're talking about. And, one of the things I learned early on is, the difference between management and leadership. Management is executing, an assigned series of tasks and getting very good at it. But leadership is something a little different. Leadership, really is about building the strength of team and having that team want to go where you're asking them to go. Now that has to be informed by what they want to do and their elements. But if you really are in service to your team, then you have to think about, well, what does my team need of me? Not what do I want to do? And I kind of realized I had to figure out this communication path. I had one great break. My wife is a communications major background and kind of helped me start to think about this and just then convincing some of the original owners of VHB who I joined in that, guys, we have to invest in this idea of communications, of raising our game, of, sharing where we want to go and not being afraid to realize we need to connect with people's hearts as well as their minds. And for engineers, that can be so painful and hard.
Yeah.
But again, if it's in service to this is what my team needs me to do in order to get us there, I think it's worth the time and effort to learn and to talk to people with kind of great expertise in how do you communicate, how do you storytell. I don't think of it as much as marketing and sales as much as just how do you share what's on your mind? How do you connect with people and connect what they're working on and what they want to achieve, and finding ways to communicate that, whether it's verbal in one-on-one conversations, whether it's you're talking to an office or you're sending a note out to the whole company or you're doing a live stream to the whole company, and start to think about what are those major messages that reinforce our culture, that reinforce our vision and what we're trying to do in our strategy, and try to stay, on message, but in a sincere, legitimate way. You can't be BS about it. You've got to be sincere about it and think it through.
Well, I think, as I told you, Mike, last year when I was walking through the office, I think that's the core of the vibe right there that you have going through the organization. And as we talked, I told you, Mick and I travel all over the country, lots of different countries. And when we go to different cities, we can tell when a city is alive or when it's kind of flat, lifeless. And VHB is brimming. Even we were there when, weren't too many people in the office because of coming out of COVID. And even then, even when it was about 30% full, you could literally hear the buzz, feel the buzz in the office. And I've always thought since we began working together that it was almost tangible. And I think that's something to be really proud of. And it's of tremendous value to the firm. I got to ask you, Mick, how different does VHB look today than it did years and years ago to you?
Well, before I get to that, Mark, if I can, so Mike, when I follow you on LinkedIn, when I see your posts on LinkedIn or where you appear on LinkedIn, it's almost invariably you speaking or hosting a town meeting or visiting with people, either as part of VHB or when you're doing your work with ACEC National. And it looks like a lot of dialogue is happening. It looks like there's a lot of listening going on. It looks like you're sharing ideas. How much reinforcement or one-on-one do you get from your people to say, dude, what you're doing is contagious, and it's made a difference for me, in the work that I do. It's made a difference for me in how I engage with my teammates. It makes a difference for me in terms of working with my clients. Do you get a lot of, I'm trying to think beyond, the organized surveys, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Do you get that type of feedback, and how important is that for you?
I do get that feedback, and I'll tell you, every time I get it, it energizes me more to do more of it. And what people say is it helps connect, what we do is challenging. We're trying to figure out really hard technical challenges, and, how does it work within a community and client, peers. I mean, there's a lot of things that make what we do, challenging and hard every day. But when you can say, but what you're doing is making a difference on how this community is working, how our company is advancing a strategic initiative, how effectively you manage that project created a great amount of profitability that we can reinvest in kind of leadership and learning and development in our company. It changes that challenge every day from just a head down slog it out to, oh no, this is worth it because we're making something better. Yeah. And I've been amazed at how often people come up and say that to me, and particularly people from other firms who come in and they'll say, Mike, you and your leadership team, the conversation is just different. You want to know what's on our minds. You're quick to celebrate everything we're advancing in this office. You put it in terms that, tie to this bigger picture where we're going. So I can start to see the thread from what I'm doing to what VHB now at 2,200 people, which still blows my mind.
Yeah. It's right.
I get how what I'm doing impacts that.
Yeah.
And so it's reinforcing and energizing to do it. I will say becoming CEO is a daunting task, and you have all these ideas of the CEOs that maybe you've worked for, that you're aspiring to be. And when you start I found what it actually becomes is very different than what I thought it would be. You're not, you sitting there thinking, about what the hardest things to fix or the hardest things to change or the hardest things to engage in, or the machinations of the financials or the ownership model. Yes, they're all important, but you don't even really get to work on those things or concern about them unless you have a thriving company moving forward. And what I found was my engagement and spending time with every office, spending time, not just me talking, but me spending the day, putting my phone away, not checking email, just going around shooting the breeze with people, in addition to some organized sessions, but just, hey, what are you working on? What's the cool project you're doing? How are you doing it? You're running into any problems? Oh, so-and-so in the Tampa office had a similar problem. Let me connect you with them. That has become more important, I think, on creating what you talk about, that vibe or that feeling that all of us are heading in the same direction. And then when that happens, that's the bigger focus and has more impact than I would have realized when I took on the role.
Yeah.
And so how I allocate my time has changed over the years. And so, it's more about the communicating, the reinforcing, the company and our gang seeing me out there thinking about, well, where's the industry going, and bring some of those ideas back, and how can we learn from that? It creates better opportunities to take care of the nuances of what you have to adjust along the way to to fix the operational things. I'm not saying they're not hard or they're unimportant, but if you've got a team all headed the same direction that is trying to accomplish the same things and is growing, those things are a bit more reasonable to spend time fixing along the way.
Yeah.
And Mike, that's how growth happens. And it was funny you mentioned 2,200 people, can't believe it. And I just remember when we were working together, there was some concern about, well, what happens when we hit this magic 2,000 mark from some people? And the dirty little secret was we had already passed that mark. 2,000 people.
Yeah.
Well, we're here. I think it's time now for Word to the Wise, Mick.
That's indeed.
And this is where we ask our guests for some wise words, not wise cracks, Mike, just wise words.
Please do.
And Mike, if you could write a letter to the next generation of leaders in your firm, what would be the one piece of advice you would emphasize above all else?
Make sure you keep your focus on that balance of your people and the performance of the company. If you concentrate on one versus the other, you will get out of balance. And the more you can keep them in balance and the more you can communicate and know and understand and empower and celebrate your people, the more opportunity it gives you to tackle more challenging, daunting, exciting growth and operational issues. Where if you just focus on one, you'd say, well, we've got to just focus on the financials. You lose the heart and soul of your people. If you focus on just the people, I mean, there was a time we were thinking, well, how do we focus more on our people? And it was about, let's make sure we have a foosball table in every office, or let's
Climbing wall,
we
all
can
the
get
rest of
carried
it.
away. And you're like, well, no, we're missing the point. Yeah, we're checking all these boxes. You got to keep the balance of them. You know what I mean? And if you focus all there and you lose focus on the operation, then you can say, hey, you're great people. I know you've worked really hard, but we actually didn't make any money this year. So sorry about that. Let's give it another try. And I've worked firms like that in the past.
Yeah.
That's very demoralizing.
Yeah.
So it's that never lose sight of the balance.
Yeah, and you have to have that pendulum right at the bottom. Hopefully it's not swinging one way or the other too much. You got to just keep it still as much as possible.
But if you do that, Mike, if you have a pendulum that's just
oh, here we go. I know where this is
right
going.
at the bottom,
Yeah.
then is it a pendulum?
Yeah, right. See, this is why I've
I think of it as scales. So you're constantly
There you go. There you go.
balancing the scales.
Much better analogy, Mike.
And,
Could
but
you
the biggest
go
thing-
this with me, please?
but behind all that is have fun with it. Just keep thinking the big thoughts, have fun with it, enjoy every aspect of it, and it can be a great ride.
well, that's the great. We're all going through stuff that is the hard stuff, right? Through your lives, and this ain't what this is the good stuff. So have fun along the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I would add to that though. This is when I observe Mike in action, the fun is kind of contagious, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the passion for the business, the passion for the industry, and I don't know when that fire was lit, Mike, but that passion I have to imagine is contagious, and it gives people permission to have fun while they're doing all these great things in the context of the VHB strategic plan.
That was I found that and tapped into that. Kind of Rich Hagan, Bob Bruslin, Bill Roach, and just seeing what those guys were doing when I came into VHB. And I didn't know it could be that way.
Yeah.
And there's times now that they've even said, Mike, you're all in on this. How do you keep that? And I say, well, I never realized when you guys were trying to put this company that you aspired it to be together, you had the trust of everybody, and I was all in believing you. And they said, that's interesting because we were hoping it would turn out right.
Yeah.
Well, you convinced us and we went all in, and you were right.
Mike, how you feeling about 2025?
We're in a pretty good shape as VHB. We've had a really strong year. We've got a great backlog going in. There's always challenges, but I think the things that we identified in our strategic plan to work on are already, giving us some kind of some leg up on opportunities. I think our people are charged up. I think the one unknown is, anytime you change administrations, there's always a period of churn and turmoil. And I just think everybody's kind of watch what actually will happen and what will change around our industry. The basic principles of our industry, the markets of our industry are strong, but how it executes will probably need to be different. And anytime something's different, you just go through a little turmoil. But I believe, VHB will figure out how to navigate it.
So, Mike, don't ever tell me that a CEO isn't tough, because I remember when we had our strategic planning session, we were at breakfast and I watched you. I couldn't figure out why people were helping get your breakfast for you and showing you very gingerly to the table, but you were very erect and deliberate with your movements. Please recount that little story.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea what was happening. I had woke up, that was a Monday. I had woke up on Sunday having tightness in my back that I'd never had before. And by the time that was in DC, I came down from Boston. And by the time I saw you that morning, I was in excruciating pain that turned out to be a battle at sciatica. And it was bringing tears to my eyes. But again, it's that thing.
I have that effect on people, Mom.
And I thought, I can power through this. I can power through it. It took everything.
But you did. You did. I don't understand how you were concentrating. You were listening, you were responding, and it wasn't just, you weren't talking ragtime. You were actually adding value. I was astonished because I knew how much pain you were in.
It was that, okay, if I put all my focus there, maybe I can dull the pain. The pain never dulled, but I focused more than I ever have.
Oh,
And,
you were right.
I'm so glad to say, that was about slowly ramped down over about 6 weeks. And ever since.
Well, glad I could bring it up and curse you for that. So be ready in the next 24 hours.
As I was walking away and people were helping.
Well, that's my way. No, to help. I'm not going to lose that comedic value out of this. I needed to take advantage of it. What character? Mike, we really appreciate you being here today, and thanks for joining us. And again, Happy New Year to you and yours. You won't get that from Mick. It's after January 2nd, after all. However,
I go till January 15th.
Very good. And thanks to our viewers. Please like and subscribe. Join us this March at our 2025 M&A and Business Symposium in Miami, and get your copy of the 2024 Word on the Street collection, our entire bank of 2024 Word on the Street articles in one place. So we'll leave links in the description below, or just visit morrisseygoodale.com, and see you next time on the street.